Okay, today is the 10th of October, and we're going to be discussing the governor's race between Ted Strickland, the Democratic candidate, and Ken Blackwell, the Republican candidate. This is the fourth show in a series called Athens Speakout. My name is Robert Whaley. I'm a historian, and I'm going to be the first speaker giving the case for Ted Strickland. And my colleague over here, Steve Antle, is going to then give the case for Ken Blackwell. Then the third part of this show is going to be a kind of a rebuttal in which I ask questions about Blackwell on the issues. And the fourth part, we turn it over to Steve again, and he will ask questions about Ted Strickland and his part. Then the fifth part will be something about the third-party candidate on the Libertarian ticket, Bill Pierce. And I'm going to be saying why that would be bad to throw away your vote. And Steve is going to have the last word in the sixth part, and he's going to defend why a vote for Bill Pierce will help. Okay, I'm ready to go to part two, the case for Ted Strickland. First place, he's had experience. He was elected in 1992 and to Congress. He came from Lucasville in southeast Ohio. And he won in a close vote because this is a very conservative district. And his voting record in Congress is partly on the conservative Democratic side and partly on the liberal Democratic side, depending upon the issue. His liberalism comes from his family. He had 7 or 8 brothers, came from a situation which was close to poverty. And he served 6 terms, has 14 years of experience in federal-state relations. And he has experience in resisting corporate power and the Washington lobbies while he was in Washington. Secondly, he has a strong understanding of the way the national economy works. Strickland knows that Ohio needs manufacturing jobs. And in Congress, he was always opposed to NAFTA, which is going to export jobs to Mexico in order to get lower wages, and NAFTA then helps Mexican agrarian, agricultural, poverty-stricken people go over the border and come to the United States and lower wages even further. This is costing many jobs in this region, and Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and California have a border problem. Moreover, Ted Strickland is opposed to the Chinese trade treaty, which weakens the American economy even further because we're exporting high-tech jobs to China, and then Walmart imports cheap Chinese manufactured goods and sells them at a cheap price in Athens. And the poorer people in Athens don't make enough on minimum wage to pay for all of the products. So the minimum wage is now $5.25, and Strickland is in favor of increasing that minimum wage in order for the working class to buy the various consumer products that are coming off the assembly line. Strickland is for health insurance, expanding health insurance, expanding and keeping Social Security as a federal right to the retired people, and he would even like to expand Medicare for all of those who do not have health insurance. So that Blackwell in his post has been a rubber stamp for the Bush administration, who's trying to roll back Social Security and trying to roll back Medicare payments. Under Clinton, when Hillary was in office, She made a proposal in 1994 for universal health insurance. And Strickland favored that too. But the banks and the insurance company were able to buy television plays, and they were very clever in putting on a show, Harry and Louise, which made Hillary look like a goat. And the Republicans are better at jokes than Democrats, and they fooled a lot of people to repudiate national health insurance and stay with the private insurance companies. Unfortunately, most of the Democrats in Congress could not do very much to advance health insurance because the Republicans have loose financial laws. That means the candidates have to raise money in order to purchase television advertisement. And then after they're elected, the banks and the insurance companies and the oil companies come back to Congress and said, well, we helped finance your campaign. You owe us a vote when the issues come up. The majority of the middle class then have to pay for higher oil prices, which have to be imported, and the Taft administration has largely been a rubber stamp administration supporting everything that Bush and the Republicans in Congress have wanted. Blackwell then is interested in the Republican program called Cut Taxes, which sounds good, but it really leaves out the other half of the sentence, which is he's cutting taxes for the very wealthy, but he's not cutting the taxes of the working class and the middle class. And Strickland then is a fiscal conservative because he would raise the progressive income tax and put the burden on the rich who can afford this to help the children and the poor in southeast Ohio and all throughout the state of Ohio. Now, all of that liberal program is based on a liberal interpretation of the Bible. Strickland was trained as a Methodist minister, and I think he's qualified for the job. So when the Republicans say cut taxes, they're going to borrow the money from China and Japan, they're going to increase the debt, and our children will have to pay the higher interests. And the world banks then raise the interest rate, and that means we can buy less in the coming decades, and the oil prices go up, the insurance companies go up, the pharmaceutical drug prices go up, and we're in a middle class squeeze. Ordinary people then tend to go after the red apple even though it might be poison. So the Bush administration has thrown good dollars in Afghanistan and thrown them away, and in Iraq in a vain attempt to control oil prices. Another third part of Strickland's program is to improve education. And you have to have better schools which require taxes for a high-tech education, and that is necessary because the Ohio counties have poor schools in some of them, and Ohio as a state has to compete with the other 49 states. They have to compete with Europe, India, China, and Japan, and Massachusetts and California are doing better in investing in schools and universities, and Ohio tends to be in the bottom half of its educational system. Now, domestic politics is related to foreign politics. And when the Bush administration is fighting these foreign wars, they have to be supported with arms, and that money then is wasted in the Middle East on a futile war called the War on Terrorism, which is largely a propaganda war. Every time they kill a Muslim in Afghanistan or Iraq or Lebanon or in Gaza or in the West Bank, the Muslims are able to recruit 3 more Muslims, angry young men who then become either terrorists or jihadists or guerrillas, sectarians, and it's a never-ending process with no war. and no war end in sight. Now, the Republican Congress has given a passive consent, and they supply these arms to fanatics, and they fight civil wars on borrowed money. And Strickland and Senator Brown, who's running on the Democratic ticket, would like to invest at home and build up our energy resources here by clean coal and good pollution devices and wind power and solar power. So, in conclusion, let us restore peace in the Middle East. Let's invest in the 50 states. Let's invest in Ohio. And let's get back to honesty and hard work in industry and commerce. And now these morals come from the common law, based on 3 laws of Moses: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and you shouldn't tell lies. And the common law is also based on 3 laws of Jesus Christ: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, love thy neighbor as thyself, and we, the followers, should love one another. I'm ready for part 2, Steve and Blackwell.
Okay. First of all, I don't recall when Hillary was in office. And
well, she was the First Lady, and a lot of people
well, I think her husband was.
Her husband was the president.
He was supposed to be running the country, right?
Well, he delegated more authority to Hillary than any other president in the history of the administration. Now, that was resented by the Republicans. They said, who is this uppity woman taking all this authority? But she was a law student at Yale, and they met at Yale, and they were both equally talented.
Right.
And when the campaign is over, Hillary went to New York as senator, and some people think that Hillary wants to be president, and then Bill will come back as the Secretary of State. So there is a Clinton dynasty here.
Yeah. Well, you know what Bill would say to that?
What would he say?
He'd say, let's not be too quick to speculate.
Okay.
I didn't know when you said when she was in office in '94. I didn't realize.
Well, she had
I
an
thought
office
maybe you
in-
just
oh, no.
misspoke, but
She
you're
had an office
probably right.
Yeah,
You're
she had an
probably
office in
right.
the White House.
Right.
As assistant to the president,
Yeah.
or the assistant for health care. They gave her a title.
Mm-hmm.
And she had little bureaucrats in there.
No doubt.
Taking
No doubt.
care of the insurance business. And
Yeah.
that was what Hillary and Harry and Louise did. They went over this program and pointed out all the little flaws in it, and they killed Hillary on details. She
Right.
couldn't get to the general theme
Right.
because, they said, what are you going to do about drugs? What's the company there? Who's going to price these drugs, and how are you going to control this, and
Yeah.
who's going to pay for it? They had a lot of criticisms on the micro level.
But okay, Mr. Whaley, Dr. Whaley, which
Yeah.
I respect very much, and good friends. The Clinton administration, in my opinion, was just, unacceptable, I guess you might say, or inappropriate, as some people say.
Well, you're entitled to that opinion.
Okay, and I may be wrong, but I think I'm probably right. Right? Aren't Republicans on the right side? Okay,
They're considered right and left in the parliament. You know where the term right and left came from? You know who invented that?
I have no idea.
It was invented in the French Revolution in 1789. And those people who wanted more change, more reform, and more revolution sat on the left. And those who were conservative and status quo and didn't want any more changes sat on the right.
Yeah.
So that England and France and Germany and Italy and Switzerland and Sweden and the United States, everybody that has a democratic society speak in terms of the right and the left.
Right. Okay. That's good. I've been enlightened.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But no, I agreed with some of the things that the Clinton administration has done, like NAFTA. He was.
You agree with NAFTA?
I agree with NAFTA.
And Blackwell agrees with NAFTA.
Right.
Why?
Because NAFTA stands for the North American Free Trade Agreement,
That's right.
and Mexico is part of North America.
That's true.
Canada is part of North America.
That's also true.
I've spent a good bit of time in Canada.
Yes.
I have been in parts of Mexico.
And you're even related to a Mexican.
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm related.
So
to
you know
one.
more about Mexico than I do.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
I don't know. You're a historian, so I don't know.
No, I've never been to Mexico.
Yeah. Well,
And a majority of the voters in the state have never been to Mexico.
I lived in San Diego, but the largest port of entry
Yeah.
is Laredo, Texas.
All right.
That's the largest port of entry, and of course, we know that.
And they bring in drugs, cocaine, and all kinds of criminal activities.
Well, they're supposed to be, you know. I knew you'd try to sidetrack me, Bob.
Well, no, but you haven't got to the point. How does NAFTA help with the United States? That's
Well,
the key issue.
Okay, perhaps you should ask Bill Clinton or George Bush.
Well, Bill Clinton did go with NAFTA, and the two senators from this state, Metzenbaum and Glenn, both opposed it.
Both Democrats.
That's right. So the people who voted for NAFTA and those who voted against NAFTA was not strictly a party line. There were Republicans in favor of it. There were Republicans opposed to it.
Right.
There were Democrats in favor and Democrats against. Now, the key question is from what state they came from.
Right.
So the New York politicians, whether they were Democrats or Republicans.
And you're from New York.
I was born there.
Okay.
But I'm a resident of Ohio, and I've always voted in Ohio.
Okay.
But in any case, the New York City and the banks wanted NAFTA because they're going to make money whether you import or export.
Right.
But the people from Ohio who have to manufacture goods are going to lose by so-called free trade
Mm-hmm.
because they lose the high-tech jobs in the steel industry, the rubber industry, the automobile industry, the glass industry, the shoe industry. Let's take Nelsonville. They used to have a plant here to manufacture boots.
Yeah.
They went to
Right.
Dominican Republic
Right.
in order to get
I
all...
was upset about that. I went to school here at Ohio University with Steve Newman,
Okay, good.
who, in Brooks boots, walked around the world.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, I
Took
didn't.
4.5 years.
Didn't know anything
Walk
about
around
that.
the world. He was a member of the Alpine Club here on the Ohio University campus.
Good. Well, now they have a Caribbean thing that's going to add to the
Okay.
NAFTA.
Yeah.
And Brown and Strickland are both opposed to giving more concessions to the Caribbean countries because Haiti has even lower wages than Mexico.
Oh, well, I don't think Haiti has, you don't have to worry about Haiti.
I have to worry about American baseballs that used to be manufactured in the United States and are now manufactured in Haiti because they're cheaper.
You have to be worried about that. Are you still playing baseball at 76? or-
No, I have to be worried about the guy who used to manufacture Wilson sport equipment and had enough money to buy the automobiles and now no longer can afford them.
Okay.
And no longer can afford them.
Excuse me.
I'm interested in the working class and the middle class as a whole. Not only in Ohio, but in every state in the Union.
Well, I was born here in Athens, Ohio.
Well, congratulations. You're more qualified than I am in knowing what went on in Nelsonville. I only learned about it in secondhand.
Okay. Well, I won't say that I know what happened in Nelsonville other than
Well, the economy. How Nelsonville...
yes, it did, and it's
Yeah.
too bad. Brooks is a fine, corporate organization,
Right,
and they're local. Those people grew up here in southeastern Ohio.
right.
It's a local business.
And there must be 1,000 types of business like that went out, going under.
Right. But anyway,
But the computer industry out in California, they're for
Right.
NAFTA because they're going to sell computers all over the world.
Right.
And China's going to buy.
It's driving a truck. I went
You
out
know
to
the
Microsoft. Yeah, I
And
know.
you know the import.
Microsoft and all of those companies.
Right.
Hewlett-Packard.
Right.
So the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Helps some and hurts others.
Well, yeah, but you know what? You can buy products at Walmart or, some of these stores, and I
Cheap.
bet you shop at Walmart, Bob.
I don't shop normally. Now, I did go there one time to buy a VCR,
Okay.
because a VCR is a high-priced item. But I don't go to NAFTA, I don't go to Walmart to get bananas at 32 cents rather than 39 cents.
Oh, okay.
It isn't worth the energy. You drive the car out there, you lose it on gas. So I don't normally go to NAFTA. I don't normally go to Walmart.
But, so what is Strickland's stand on NAFTA?
Well, it's too late to repeal it, but what both Strickland and Brown and presumably certain Democratic presidential candidates, like Edwards, would like to do is renegotiate the treaty.
Right.
To not just include goods,
Right.
but to include labor standards. So if you lift the pollution standards and the labor standards in Mexico, and that brings all boats up. But if they have low pollution standards and they have low wages, the Mexicans are dragging down the American standard of living. So that's the only solution to this. And slave labor in China.
Right.
What the Democrats would like to do is say, all right, we're going to ban imports if it comes from India or China and it's based on child labor or slave labor. And there is an international treaty, the ILO, the International Labor Organization, which supposedly abolished child labor, but it's not enforced.
Right.
Now, back in the 30s, that was one of the big platforms of the New Deal.
Yeah.
Stop child labor. And they stopped child labor in the United States, but they don't do it worldwide.
Right.
And you know in Mexico,
Yeah.
my God, they have these smugglers
Yeah.
who bring kids in a tractor trailer. Some of them die in the desert.
Yeah.
Tragic.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We're talking about NAFTA, and I was going to ask about what Strickland thought about as far as, putting a stop to these illegals just coming across the border.
Well, I don't know specifically about the recent immigration crisis.
Yeah.
Because both the Democrats and the Republicans have hid that up.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether you've been watching Lou Dobbs, but Lou Dobbs in the last 2 months has made a specialty on the border,
Right.
border security.
Yeah.
And there are some Republicans down in Arizona who would like to stop this importation.
Yeah.
And both the Democrats and the Republicans on a national level are responsible.
Yeah.
Because the Kennedys think they're going to get more votes if there are more Mexicans that come here. They're going to vote Democratic. The Republicans think that they'll get cheaper labor to go to Nebraska and cut meat, and they can keep the prices down.
Yeah.
So both the big corporate interests
Right.
in Washington
Right.
want to have loose border controls,
Right.
and the locals, the state
Yeah.
interests, want to enforce that and try and stop this 12 million illegals.
All right. One of the things about, especially in California, where they come across, the same way in Arizona, they come across and then a lot of times they'll work their way all the way up to in the Sacramento area, or perhaps they'll stay in the Escondido area and pick avocados and everything like that. But do you realize what an avocado or, an orange would cost if you didn't have these people in the United States? I kind of think, regardless if it's a Republican or Democrat president, I kind of think that, they know that those people, a lot of them who are illegal, do play a big role in our economy because they work for nothing.
I'm kind of smiling because in the 1930s, when we had the Depression, my father was in the orange business.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to go down to Florida, and you know who picked the oranges? All blacks. And they came there in rags, but they had jobs. Now what's happened is, in Texas, the Mexicans are displacing the blacks, and the blacks go on welfare. Now, I don't know whether you've ever seen some stuff about California. What they did in California in the 1930s was to round up the Mexicans and ship them on a railroad right back to Mexico. because they had plenty of Okies and Aukies, whites, who came from Arkansas
Yeah.
and would pick those peaches and avocados
Right.
at low wages.
Right.
Well, the problem today is we have a gap in what people will work for.
Right.
And so the Mexicans do produce a lot of work at low wages,
Yeah.
because there are uppity whites now who don't want to pick avocados.
Yeah. I think we got a.
And they want minimum wage.
Yeah. I think we got a person in our studio office or studio office.
Good. All right, it's an office. Okay, go ahead.
Audience is the word. Audience. That's the word.
Okay, but it's in an office room. That's what confuses.
Actually, you've already identified you've already answered it. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, what was the question?
Well, that's all right.
Or what was it about? With NAFTA or?
Well, yeah, I was wondering if NAFTA was something that is a concern of Blackwell's. I don't know if you've addressed that at
He
all.
just simply endorses it. He simply
Yeah.
says if Bush wants it, he wants it.
Well, it goes around. It goes up. Well, we don't like to say rubber stamp, but it goes along with the program. You know, just like Bob Whaley goes along with his program.
Yes,
But-
I am a loyal Democrat.
Okay, and I want to say one thing before I forget it, and I don't think she's probably watching in San Marcos, California right now, but I know one Mexican that does vote Republican.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's true. I think it might be as high as 10%.
Oh, you didn't catch that, did you?
Well, some Mexicans vote Republican.
I said one
Who?
in San Marcos.
Wait a minute.
I see.
Your humor is great, but I'm kind of a dull.
It's my wife, is what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What's
Well, you said that the Mexicans all vote Democratic, you know.
I shouldn't have said all.
Okay.
Majority.
All right.
And
I'm just joking, and I'm going to quit doing that.
And
because it's not-
I would imagine at least 10%, maybe 20%.
I don't think the audience is appreciating me joking.
That's all right.
They're looking kind of mean at me.
No, this is an in conversation.
Right. We're just
inside-
having a discussion
We're inside
here.
the Athens Beltway here.
Oh, there we are, inside the Beltway. I never thought of it that way. Even the producer's laughing from time to time. Eh?
Oh, very good.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Well,
You're doing a great job.
Have you finished Blackwell?
Well, you know, I think
I've kinda cut you off a bit.
I got some notes here on
Good.
Blackwell. He's got a Bachelor of Science, 1970, and a Master's in Education. He went to Xavier University in Cincinnati, and he very successful man. He wasn't like some people when they graduate from Ohio State or somewhere like that, and then they go to, Seattle, Washington. He stayed in the area, and he's been
In the Cincinnati area.
Yeah,
the
he was
southwest part of the state.
Well, he was on the city council. He was the Cincinnati mayor. He was a federal undersecretary of Housing and Urban Development, and he was a U.S. ambassador to the UN Human Rights Commission. He's been the Ohio treasurer, and he was the Ohio Secretary of State. And I think even though that Strickland has a PhD and is very well liked here in the Athens area, I think that the students will vote for him, and I think probably, as it typically does, Athens County will vote Democratic. But Blackwell, in my opinion, is much better qualified than Strickland. Let me just tell you this, and I've never heard this anywhere else. It's printed in Columbus Dispatch. He was the vice president of Xavier and associate director of the Center of Urban Studies. But the big thing was he was a partner in Blue Chip Broadcasting from 1994 to 2001. And they had, let me see, I think they had like 9 stations that they sold for $190 million. So that pretty much shows that he is quite the businessman. And I think would be better for the state of Ohio than another Democrat. That it's always been my opinion that Democrats like to tax and spend, and I don't think that's what Ohio wants right now.
Can I interrupt now, or?
Go right ahead. I don't think I've interrupted you, did I? Or perhaps I did. Go ahead.
Well, okay, that's up to the chair here. What I would like to,
I don't mean to sound contentious.
What I would like to add is, I'm sure that Blackwell has made more money than Strickland. But I don't see where successful businessmen have anything to do with politics. George Bush has made much more money than Blackwell did.
Well,
So making of money is almost antithetical to the interests of the working class and the middle class, because as we raise profits, costs and wages are reduced. So how did Blackwell get all these millions?
You know,
by exploiting the poor.
No. That's radio stations. How can you exploit the poor by running a radio station?
All right, I'll tell you how it's done.
Okay.
When I was a boy, I used to listen to radio. And they used to advertise Lucky Strikes and Camels and Chesterfields.
Right.
And Lucky Strike had an advertisement. T-zone, your throat zone, buy Lucky Strikes. Now, I regard that as BS with a capital B and a capital S. Now, Camels had a rebuttal, okay?
Right.
More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
And then they had another a cigarette called Old Golds.
Yeah.
If you want a treat instead of a treatment, buy Old Golds. That's how they make money.
Great.
Advertising.
Right.
Advertising.
Well,
Advertising of oil, advertising of cigarettes and beer and whiskey and Hollywood television, sex. Ooh, they're making a bunch of money. I don't want this money to go to Hollywood and Madison Avenue and these TV producers. They're corrupt.
Did I forget?
They're undermining the morals of the country.
Hey, you know, capitalism is the American way, though, Dr. Whaley.
But the old capitalism had restrictions. They said that gambling and drug consumption and alcohol consumption should be limited by legislation.
Okay.
Our morals have gone down the tube ever since 1945.
Right.
And television is making more money. Hollywood is making more money. Baseball stars are making more money.
Yeah. You know, when you're...
Football stars, and that's where Blackwell got his start, football.
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, he made big money. But how does that help the country?
Well, that's a good question.
I'm sorry I embarrassed you.
I know there's one guy out there in the audience. He's thinking Bill Pierce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, the whole
Well,
thing...
we're going to come to that, but I want to see if he's finished with his Blackwell pitch. Because I have some criticism.
Okay. By the way, I just want to state that Bill or Bob. You're not Bill.
No, I'm Bob. Yeah.
Yeah, Bob. I'm Steve.
Steve, sorry.
Bob and I interviewed the Libertarian candidate for governor.
Are we on to that subject, or are we still on Blackwell?
No, I'm just, you know.
Oh, you want to jump ahead?
Well, we're just gonna move around.
Fine, that's all right.
But anyway, Bob here interviewed the Libertarian candidate.
Fine.
Bill Pierce, who lives in the Cleveland area.
Right.
He graduated from Harvard, and he also graduated from Princeton with a PhD.
That's true.
And he's was a professor at Case Western Preserve. And he's a retired professor at Case Western, and he taught economics.
True.
And what, 30 years or something, I guess it was. It was a long time. But anyway, some people I know think that we need an economist in the state of Ohio, because the state of our economy right now is not desirable, and you probably want to blame that on Robert Taft, but
Do I have the floor now on
you go
Pierce?
for it. Go for it.
Okay, you say that we need economists.
We need an economist.
Okay, now my answer to this is that we have the right and left politicians, and we have Democrats and Republicans, and we have a great division in schools of economics. Now there is the Adam Smith, Milton Friedman School of Economics.
Right.
And we call that laissez-faire economics.
Right.
And
Leave business alone, right?
Yeah, leave business alone. That's their slogan. No regulations. And then we have what might be called socialist economists, invented by Karl Marx, who said, well, if you allow capitalism to grow like this, they're going to suppress the working class to such a point that they will eventually go to revolution.
Right.
Because the rich get richer and the poor get poor, and gradually these small businesses
Right.
get less and less, and we
Right.
have bigger and bigger corporations. So he predicted that socialism would be inevitable.
Right.
Now, socialism did a gain from 1870, we'll say, to about 1914.
Right.
Now, the First World War and the Russian Revolution kind of tarnished the reputation of socialism, and Marx has never been very popular in America. Now, there's a kind of a median kind of economist known as Keynesian economist.
right. I
And John
remember.
Maynard Keynes
I
was
remember studying
a famous English economist who became the economic guru of Franklin Roosevelt. And what Keynes was saying is, well, we don't want complete socialism. We want a mixed economy. And we have to more or less socialize the banks.
Right.
And we have to regulate the interest rates because they are a natural monopoly. And we have to press the bank's interest rates down by the government
Right.
so that the ordinary businessman can borrow at cheap rates and invent new businesses like the computer business. And then they will create jobs, and then if they get jobs, they can go out and buy more beef and more avocado pears, and they can live, and that'll give the farmers job. Well, that was called priming the pump,
Right.
putting a floor under the poorer classes and putting a ceiling with an income tax at the top, so that the rich cannot get richer and richer. They have to reinvest in the economy. Well, anyway, the New Deal was supported by Truman and supported by Johnson, and Johnson ruined the New Deal program and ruined Keynesian economics because of the Vietnam War. You see, what Keynes said was you have to have a mild inflation in order to have full employment. What Johnson did was say, inflation inevitable, because I'm going to win the war.
Right.
And then Nixon continued that, and we kept on going deeper and deeper into the Indochina quagmire, and now we have Bush coming along and getting into Afghanistan, getting in, and he's duplicating the worst mistakes of the Johnson-Nixon era, and our dollar is going through the roof, and the value of gold is going up, and the value of the dollar is being deflated. So, no, I'm against laissez-faire economics, because under laissez-faire economics, the Chinese banks, the Japanese banks, the Dutch banks are winning,
Right.
and the American banks are winning temporarily because the rest of the world is so poor.
Right.
But if that process goes on for 10, 20 years, the stock market may explode someday. The bond market may explode someday. Because some Japanese is going to say, hey, this paper dollar isn't worth what they say.
Right.
And that's what de Gaulle did during the Nixon-Johnson era. He said, well, you know, this paper dollar is melting. I'm going to get gold.
Yeah.
So gold went from $32 an ounce to what? $550 an ounce now? That's the real value,
Right.
gold. Sorry to be so hard on you.
Well, I just
so hard on Pierce, who is kind of limited. He's kind of living in the 1840s. He assumed.
Why do you suggest that? You
Well,
know, I was there during that interview. You know, that wasn't my perception of...
But his economics is supply and demand, you know, free market. Well, back in 1840, when the majority of the American people were farmers and owned their own farm and were in kind of an equal position, and we didn't have corporations. Corporations were very tiny in 1840. We didn't have Standard Oil and Exxon and Chase Bank and all of those things were rather small.
Yeah, you're right.
And when the Democrats came in with Jefferson and Jackson, William Jennings Bryan, Woodrow Wilson,
right.
What they wanted to do was regulate those banks, keep the interest rates down, okay?
Okay.
Neither a borrower nor a lender be.
Right.
So that's the problem, is debt.
Right.
$800 billion in China.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's why Pierce is ineffective.
Well, you know, the thing is...
He doesn't see the whole picture.
Yeah.
He's an economist who takes an X-ray and said, well, capitalism was good in 1840. It was good in 1870. But where was his history? He lacked the history.
A question I have to you about Bill Pierce is the fact that he taught economics at a prestigious school like Case Western Reserve for 30-some years.
Okay, but there are two kinds of economists. There are economists like Adam Smith,
right,
and Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes, who are all historical economists.
Right. Right.
Then you have these econometric people. They study the charts, and they know how the stock market is going up, and they know when to buy and sell.
Right.
But they don't have any concept of history.
Did I ask?
And they say to you at the stock market, Enron, that's what they tell you.
Yeah.
They say, well, our stock is going up, buy, it's going to go up forever.
Right.
BS. BS, it's not going to go up forever.
Yeah.
And some guy like Ken Lay was left holding the bag.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, he didn't hold it for very long.
Well, he's out, but they're
He's dead. He's dead.
Yeah, but supposedly there are a dozen other companies that have shaky books.
Okay. Well, but there you go with that speculation again.
Well, we have to have some prosecutors on Wall Street to kind of test this. We've got to have a strong Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah. But,
Antitrust Division.
Right.
See, Wilson created the Antitrust Division called the Clayton Act.
Yeah, I studied
and then
that.
when Reagan got in there, and when Nixon got in there, and when Bush got in there, they appoint the foxes to guard the chicken house.
Well,
they appoint stockbrokers.
I'd like.
They say, well, we don't.
I'd like to. I'd like
we
to.
We don't hear any evil. We don't speak any evil. Everything is okay.
Hey, Dr. Whaley, I would like to ask a question, if I could, please.
Sure. Sorry.
Why is it when somebody's at fault, it's always a Republican?
Always a Republican? No,
Yeah.
I do respect some Republicans.
Okay. You respect me, right?
Well, let's talk about history. I think that Teddy Roosevelt was a good...
Oh, there you go. Because I was going to say, you like Franklin and I like Theodore.
I think Teddy Roosevelt was a respectable president.
Right. And they were what, cousins? Or?
No, he was a Republican. That was one good Republican.
Well, they were cousins, so long as he was.
Fine. That's all right.
Franklin and Theodore were related.
Right, but that's a small footnote detail.
Well, that might be, but the thing is.
Anyway, Teddy Roosevelt was a respectable Republican. And Abraham Lincoln was even better.
Right.
And he was a liberal Republican. He was more liberal than the Democrats. He freed the slaves.
I find that hard to believe, but
liberty for the slaves. What could you want?
Well,
you know, the South at that time were slaveholding.
Right.
And it was Lincoln who, in his campaign speech, said, "Well, a country cannot remain half slave and half free."
Right.
And the Gettysburg Address is one of the most liberal addresses that were ever given. Emancipation Proclamation. Yeah. And all the blacks know that. Right. Now, the blacks used to vote in the Republican Party up to 1932.
Okay, that brings me...
And it was Roosevelt who took the black vote away from the Republicans.
That brings me back. That brings me back to the man, J. Kenneth Blackwell, who is running for governor of the state of Ohio, and who I feel is the most qualified of the two.
Because he was a businessman and he was successful in making money.
All right. That's what you want. You don't want somebody that's unsuccessful in business to run a state.
I think that business has to be regulated by the politician.
Well, I mean, it'll continue to be regulated by the politician. I mean, you know.
There are strict regulations and foxes in charge of the chicken house who don't do much regulating.
But
That's
you know,
the problem.
Yeah. Well, how do you think, he's from Cincinnati, he will take Cincinnati, I think, as far as...
Probably he will.
Yeah.
Although there's some doubt about that.
Yeah. Some say he may take Columbus.
Some doubt about that. More doubt in Columbus.
And...
You know, they have a black mayor up there, Coleman.
Right.
And he's supporting the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And they have Jesse Jackson coming here to speak. And then they have some blacks in Cleveland.
Well, Cleveland, you know, Cleveland's got a large black population.
That's right,
so.
and they'll stick with the Democratic Party. About 80 or 90% of the blacks vote in the Republican and the Democratic side. So Blackwell has made some inroads, especially on the religious question. He has recruited a few black Pentecostals who look at this in emotions rather than in economic realities.
Emotions. That's, you know, I heard Rush Limbaugh say once that liberalism was based on emotion, whereas conservatism was based on logic and rational thinking.
I would say just a remark.
Logic is defined as a rational approach to an irrational situation. Democrats don't use that approach.
Wait a minute. Logic comes from having a BA degree and a PhD degree, and I think the Democrats have had more PhD senators than any Republican congressman who has a business degree. Now, they don't use...
Well, he's got Blackwell has an education
He has an
degree.
education, and he majored in sports. He majored in sports. And he's tall, and he's good charisma, and that's why he went into
Bachelor of Science degree
yes, yes.
In 1970, Master's degree in education in 1971.
What was that science? Biology? Chemistry?
I have no idea.
Okay.
And he graduated from Xavier University in Cincinnati, which is another very good school.
A BA or a PhD?
Well, he's got a bachelor. He's got both a Bachelor of Science.
A Bachelor of Science, right?
And don't you say BS? And Masters in Education.
A Master's in Education.
Right.
Okay.
So I think he's going to address some of the problems we have in our schools.
Right.
And I think you'll probably see him.
But he's for charter schools. He's for schools for the rich and the well-born.
You're thinking of Bill Pierce. You're thinking of Bill Pierce and the charter schools.
Well, what's Blackwell going to do for the lower class Southeast Ohio schools, Perry County and Benton County, where they don't have a tax base to hire good teachers?
Right.
The best teachers go to Upper Arlington, and we're going to have to close down now. Our time is up. But I would just say, he says we have a few more minutes to wrap this up, and we can summarize this, and we'll give you the first shot.
Okay.
You can tell us again why vote for Blackwell and why vote for Pierce, and then I will conclude of why I should vote for Strickland, and we'll summarize what I think of Pierce. I haven't had really a shot at Pierce.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I've had. In the informal, I've more or less knocked Pierce out of it.
Okay.
But I just might summarize this in a few small points.
Right. There are some issues that people are concerned about. One of them's abortion. Another one's the same-sex marriage, and the other is the stem cell research. Blackwell opposes abortion rights, but would permit a medical procedure necessary to save the life of the mother, even if it kills the fetus. Same-sex marriage, he thinks that marriage is between one man and one woman, and he helped lead the 2004 campaign to put that definition. in Ohio Constitution, and he opposes gay civil unions. And I think your candidate opposes or supports some of those things.
No, well,
He favors abortion rights, but opposes partial birth abortion.
Let's clarify Strickland.
Okay.
Strickland believes that the Supreme Court decided in 1973 under Wade versus Roe that the woman has free choice to decide whether she wants to come to term with her pregnancies, and that no woman should be forced to have a baby that she doesn't want.
Right.
Because a mother has an 18-year obligation at least to help raise that
Right.
child and give that child a moral education. So sometimes having an abortion is actually the more moral choice.
Right.
And that should be up to the
okay.
woman, not up to a minister.
I'm not going to agree
not
with
up
that.
to a priest.
I'm not going to agree with that, but what I'm going to say is, where does Ted Strickland stand on abortion then?
He support Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court decided that in 1973. It should be a dead issue. Now, in 1988, I want to refer to the Dukakis Bush First campaign.
41.
Yeah, Bush 41. Bush 41 was saying how much he disliked abortion, and Dukakis asked him a question, and Bush never gave the answer. He said, all right, Mr. Prosecutor, what do you want to do with the women, millions of women who've already had abortion? Bush could not answer that. Are they going to arrest them, put them in prison, going to chop off their head?
Right.
What are they going to do with these women? You can't abolish abortion. It's physically impossible. In the United States today, now back in the 1840s, yes, you could abolish abortion.
Well, you know,
because the population was
Okay.
so low then,
Right,
and
right.
there were so many who died in childbirth that we didn't have an overpopulation problem.
The key word in that is abolish, and Ken Blackwell opposes abortion rights, but he's never said that they would abolish it.
Well, what's he want to do with Roe versus Wade? Does he want to repeal that?
Well,
or
you
leave
know,
it
that's
on-
probably a federal instead of a state.
Well, no, what Roe versus Wade said was that no state,
That was 1973, wasn't
that's
it?
correct, no state can abolish all abortions. Now, they keep debating in Congress this question of what they call late term.
Right.
Can a woman decide 2 or 3 weeks before the birth that she wants this abortion?
Right.
And the Republicans in Congress would like to limit that, and that's a limitation on the doctors.
yeah.
They're saying that the doctors cannot have this brutal procedure if the woman wants it, and it's
Right.
better to have a forced birth than to go through this brutal procedure, because they have an argument there.
Right.
That is somewhat
Right.
valid.
Right.
That in the 9th month, that fetus has matured to such a point that it is viable.
Yeah.
So then that's a debate between the mother and the doctors.
Okay.
And I think that the
You know,
extreme...
I agree with some of what you said there.
okay,
maybe,
so
you
do we
know.
have any minute now? Are we almost up?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, I'd just like to say a little word about the homosexual question.
Okay.
Ted Strickland does not want same-sex marriage. Now, the debate about civil unions, we only have 2 states that permit civil unions. One of them is Vermont, and the other is New York. Now, this is going to be up to the Supreme Court
Okay.
to decide.
Yeah.
And now Massachusetts is the only state that allows lesbians and homosexuals to, quote, marry.
Right.
And I predict that the Supreme Court will probably...
You're correct. You're
Turn that
correct.
down.
We're just
Turn
about
it
out of time.
Okay,
You're
good.
correct. He does promote or support the civil unions.
Who? Strickland?
Strickland does, but he says he will obey the amendment.
He will obey the amendment.
Right.
He will obey what the Ohio
Right,
legislature says.
exactly.
Okay.
Whatever they decide,
And
he'll go
cons-
along with
the
it.
conservatives in Ohio will not go for civil unions at this stage. Now, 40 years from now, they may.
Yeah.
But Ohio is a conservative state.
Right. That's true. And I'm a conservative and you're a liberal. But
I'm
we
a
can
liberal.
still shake hands.
I'm a liberal, but I don't believe in same-sex marriage.
Well,
I draw the line at a certain
right.
point.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad to hear that, Bob. Thank you.